place to be is living free in Tennessee.
Welcome to Living Free in Tennessee, where we talk about building the life you choose on your terms. Today is Friday, February 7th, 2025, and this is episode, you know what episode number it is?
No idea.
You have no idea? What was my last episode number, dude?
I don't know.
You don't know? I celebrated 1,000 on Tuesdays live. So guess what today is?
1001.
1001 of Living Free in Tennessee, and today is a Homestead Happening show. We're going to catch you up on what's going on the Homestead in the last week, and I think he's a little fried. Are you a little fried?
A little bit.
Why are you fried?
I've been to town every day for the last 3 days.
Okay, yeah. So when Tactical goes to town, he ends up fried, and I'm probably going to town today. He just doesn't know it yet. Anyway, we're going to talk about lamb updates. We're going to talk about, I have paper, Operation Eyesore, one of my favorite projects in the entire world. Keeping up with meals during a week where actually more than one of us went to town multiple times this week. I too went to town 2 times, not 3 times, but it was enough. And we're also going to talk about our egg issues, which have resolved. And we're going to talk about why that is, as well as we are trying a new feed source next week. I think we're going to go pick it up. So that's what's up. We're going to talk about anything else that comes up. And I really want to have a brainstorm with y'all in the comments about ways to go from Homestead that requires somebody to work a full-time job to Homestead is the full-time job. Because it struck me when I was on the My 3 Things coaching sessions in the last couple of weeks that a lot of people are like, I don't love my job. I want something else. And a lot of people other people will start a homestead. And then what they end up doing is having to work a job to pay for the homestead. And that just seems like cattywompish upside down, don't you think?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's totally upside down. So we need to talk about that a little bit. So welcome to Skane's Girl. And who else joined us? DFW and Kiri. Okay, you guys are in the live stream. All right. Before we do that, I want to talk about our featured event of today's show. And this is one that y'all have not heard of. So Amy Felak, who's like an awesome rabbit lady, and we got our gray rabbit from her. Right?
Yes.
Okay. Well, she let me know that there is an event in Huntsville, Alabama, which is February 15th, I believe. Doesn't say on my notes, but I'm pretty sure it's the weekend of the February 15th. It's called Rabbits and Roses, and you can sign up on Facebook. The link is in the show notes of this episode, and this may change your perspective on your rabbit meatery. You know why? Because award-winning show rabbits sell for a lot of money. So if you're raising rabbits anyway, and you learn about like what makes a good show rabbit, it might be worth investing in showing your rabbit and potentially winning a prize. They're not all just meat necessarily. So, and since we're talking today about ideas for making money on the homestead, that's a way to pay for things if you raise a champion. In fact, the rabbit we bought from her has 1 white toenail. And that's why that rabbit couldn't show. She was going to be shown, and then, that's what happened. So that's the dealio. Okay, I also want to thank our 2 sponsors of today's show. The first one is John Pugliano of the Wealth Setting Podcast. John has a great podcast that talks about investments, how he's investing, how you might copy him if you want to, in 15-minute, 20-minute episodes, all about making your money work for you, basically. Check it out at investablewealth.com and navigate to podcasts to go check that out. Our second sponsor of today's show is Discount Mylar Bags. Discount Mylar Bags has been a sponsor since day 1 of sponsorship of the Living Free in Tennessee podcast. And he also really helped me keep costs down at Hollow Roast Coffee by leveraging his skill for my business, which is to source things in bulk and then pass on savings to you. Check that out, discountmylarbags.com. Okay. You know what the first topic of today's show is?
No idea.
You're really like choking down the coffee fast, aren't you?
I hit the wrong button the first time.
Oh, okay. I was like, he's making his second cup. We've been live for 5 minutes. That's 2 cups in 5 minutes. What button did you hit?
The little thing.
The little button?
Yeah.
So you had a shot of espresso, and now you're having a coffee?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Anyway, we have been madly marching towards feeding the supplemental lambs There are 2 of them who are getting supplemental milk twice a day instead of 3 times a day, which is down from 4 times a day. How's that going?
A lot better than 4 times a day.
Yeah. So what I've been doing is we've locked in at 8:30 in the morning is the morning feeding. And then the afternoon feeding was at like 3 and now it's at 5:30 today. And we've just been like pushing that afternoon feeding forward, and then 8:30 is the next feeding after that. So there's just that small little gap that we're narrowing up. Do you want me to move it ultimately to 8 and 8?
I mean, I think that would be good. Right now, the issue is you have feeding time going this way, sunset going this way. They kind of met and now they're starting to pass each other. So it's like today, bedtime would normally be at like, I think 4:30, and their bottle is at 5:30, which means like yesterday I went over right at sunset and it just worked out. I gave them the bottle as the last thing. Tonight they've kind of passed, so it's like I need to have them to bed by like 4:15, but bottle's not till 5 or yeah,
5:30.
Bottle's not till 5:30. So today I will probably reset to go put them to bed and then go back to give them.
Well, I feel like if bedtime's 5:15, you can go over, put them to bed at 5:15 and drag your feet for 15 minutes and then give them a bottle.
Yeah, maybe.
Because, why not? And then there's the 8:30 bottle. So he's been having fun going over there in any weather, including tornadic activity that we had yesterday. People died yesterday, right?
I did not hear that.
Yeah, so a tornado touched down, I think, near Gainesville, Tennessee, or Gainsboro, north of Cookeville. So, and 2 people are dead confirmed, and a bunch of people are injured, including like people lost limbs last night. Like it was bad.
That does not surprise me based on what I heard.
Yeah. So the reason I know more detail is that you remember how we coordinated funds for East Tennessee in October. So we started a group on Telegram, and it's for, because there's going to be another round of assistance to East Tennessee and North Carolina as needs come up. But so Jessica posted online about it, and then she said, she's finding out if they're going to need cleanup help this weekend. So if that happens, guys, I'm going to put that out on the internet, and then we'll try to get some people up there if it's because so there's the one part where there's like the loss of life and the recovery. So they've been working on recovering live and not live people out of the debris, and some live people were recovered, and some people died, and now it's just a bloody mess there. And so if there are some cleanup crews going out, which often happens right after the tornado, we'll see if anybody has time. So I know like Nighthawk likes to go help with those things.
Yeah.
So so tomorrow would probably be the earliest for cleanup, and it just happens to fall on a Saturday, which is a little easier to get to when you have a full-time job. But anyway, he was heading over. You were heading over right after one of the waves of rain, and then there were other waves of rain here. But
yeah, I was trying to shoot the gap between, but it kept moving, and there was a square-ish section of really bad, and it went, I think, just north of 40, so it went above us.
Yeah, right over Hartsville, where Ryan lives.
Yeah, that's where I first heard about it. Was the report he got was it was more rain than I've seen in 6 years that dumped in about 10 minutes.
Yeah. Was that from his wife?
I don't know who that was from, but that's what he was told, was something along those lines.
Yeah, so I would say we are squarely in severe weather time in Tennessee, and that's sort of typical of this time of year. It's February. One of the creepiest nights I've ever spent here weather-wise was on, I think it was February 2nd, 2008. I was interning in Houston with a communications guy, and I was there for 6 months. I had arranged to come home one weekend a month, and I was home that weekend. And weather blew in, and I went to bed like I always do, and I woke up, and outside was glowing kind of a red color, and light was coming up, like lightning was coming up, not going down. And it looked like basically what people show Mars looking like on sci-fi channels. So that's, it's February 7th. That's 5 days before now that was happening. The same thing. Tornadoes touched down other places and people were hurt. So it's yeah. Donna Dyer says, scary night. Rickman hit way too close, about 2 miles. So we've got people in our network who were 2 miles away, right? And that's freaky. Hey, Donna, do you know anybody who's coordinating cleanup efforts? Because I think we may have some energy behind that if you know anybody. And Jessica in particular is looking, but I'd be happy to help facilitate that happening. In other news, so new topic. How's the duck egg collection going?
Going up every day. I think it started with 2, then 5, then 8, and today was 9 or something along those lines.
So we changed food about a week and a half ago, and apparently Tactical went with not even soy free, just different food to see if that would change it, and then eggs started coming on.
Well,
is that why it happened?
The intent was to get a different soy-free feed, and when I went to the store that allegedly sold it, that company makes 5 different layer feeds, and they had 4 out of the 5. The one that they did not have was the soy-free. So I was like, well, I'll just get the regular layer feed, put them on that for however long it lasts, and see if anything changes, and intentionally not change anything else.
How'd that intentionally not changing anything else go for you, Tactical?
Not very well.
Oh, what else did you accidentally change as part of this test?
At some point in time, I don't know when, but apparently I turned the light on in the duck coop, and putting them to bed, right at sunset, just never noticed that light was on until last night.
So they were also exposed to more light. So now we don't really know if it was the feed. We've just assumed it was the feed because instantly they started laying more eggs, and then also they were getting more light, which is usually a pretty major determining factor on if poultry is laying.
And I think that probably the light got turned on around the time that we ran out of that other feed. So I'm kind of leaning towards it was probably more the light than the feed, but it might have been a combination of both.
So are we going to turn the light off and test it, or do we want eggs so bad we're just going to put that light on a timer?
I want eggs.
Okay. Yeah. So how happy have you been eating duck eggs for breakfast all week instead of freeze-dried eggs or chicken eggs?
Yes.
Can you taste the difference, Tactical?
Yes.
It's so different, right?
Well, I mean, the example I usually give people is the workshop, because usually the workshop, it's eggs one day and chicken the next. And it's like, first bite, I can always tell what I don't have to ask. Like, it's so different enough that it's just easy to tell.
By eggs, he means duck eggs, guys. It'll be duck eggs one day at the workshop and then chicken eggs another day. That does happen.
Yeah.
So apparently in Tactical's mind, there's eggs and then there's chicken eggs.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we were using the Tucker Mill organics. We went to Nature's something as a test, and then we're actually moving to the peanut protein-based feed that we can get. I think is it Bratcher Farms? Anyway, I put the link in last week's notes, and we're going to see how that does. And then it looks like we are talking about putting in a sunflower seed sprouting system finally.
And when I talk about that, I'm just talking about having a couple of buckets and a bag of sunflower seeds. I'm not planning on setting up a dedicated, permanently installed system.
Do you have 3 hooks that can hold buckets?
Probably not.
If I get 3 hooks, we can just hang them on the pole by the hose. And then you take top bucket and hang it. And it has already soaked seeds. And it has holes in the bucket for the water to come through. And then under it, you have another bucket with holes and seeds that have been there longer. And then on the bottom, it's just sort of on the ground. And that one doesn't have holes. So what you do is you put seeds in the bottom one, water from the top. And then if there's not enough to fill over the seeds, you top those to soak overnight. And then the middle bucket goes to the ducks in the morning or afternoon or whenever you want to do it. Then the bucket moves down that was up top. And then the one from the bottom goes in the freed up bucket. And then you soak new seeds. And you do that rotation once a day. And it takes 2 to 3 days for the sprouts to be ready.
Yeah.
And then like the water is falling through. So then you don't waste any water.
I don't really concern myself with the wasting of water.
You also
on
don't
this
waste space.
property.
And it's very clear what's where. Like there's a system so you know which one you're supposed to take. And then 2 people can help maintain it.
Okay.
It takes 3 hooks or maybe only 2 hooks.
Okay.
You don't believe that?
Maybe. That requires going and finding hooks and then installing it and then having a hose there. And it's just like,
We have a hose right there.
like, I was just thinking about throwing a couple of buckets outside of my screened-in porch where it's right there. And I can just go boom, boom, boom.
I like my way better.
Okay, then do your way, your way. and
Will
I'll
you do it with
mine,
me?
my way.
Why don't you
No.
try my way? We do it together. And then there's 1 set of detritus in the yard instead of 2 because buckets everywhere is also a problem.
We got buckets everywhere right now.
Right. We could have fewer buckets everywhere if we don't add even more buckets. Let's try it.
Okay.
We could build that this weekend in an hour.
Okay.
We don't believe that?
Rabbit tractor.
You and I can build it together in an hour. 2 hooks, holes in buckets.
It's the getting the hooks part.
I'm going to town today.
Okay.
You know where I'm going? Lowe's to return all that crap that you told me to buy that we didn't use.
Hey, that was not my fault. Steve came up with a better design.
What about all the lumber?
That's what the lumber was for.
I have more rocks too.
I gave you the measurements for that.
I'm just giving him a hard time, guys. But I figured I could return that stuff, and that way it doesn't go like get ruined, and get the money back, and I can buy hooks. What kind of hooks would you like me to buy?
I have no idea. That's part of the problem.
Why?
What do you mean, why?
Well, I'm just going to buy whatever hooks I buy, but if you have some input, and you usually do, then now's a good time to give it.
The heaviest hooks you can find, because you're going to be hanging a 5-gallon bucket of water off of them.
No, you're not.
It's going to end up with a bunch of water in there. So you're probably looking at least, I would plan on at least 10 to 15 pounds. Just me, if I recall.
That's 2 gallons of water?
I probably don't. I think a 5-gallon bucket is like 40 pounds.
So
Might be 20.
So to grow the sprouts in the bucket, you'll have about that many black oil sunflower seeds in it.
Yeah.
And then you need about that much water. So that would be about 1 to 2 gallons max. 2 gallons is 16 pounds, but then it filters through.
Yeah.
The soaker bucket goes on the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Then it's just, I've always had it to where you end up with a bunch of water in the bucket.
Okay.
'Cause it
Backrat
takes
says
a while to
rebar
drain.
torch bent into hooks poles. Yeah.
Yeah. See, That's where it's going to be really time consuming and take me forever to do it.
Yeah,
I've already got a
so
design
they
in my
make
head for that.
so what I need help with is drilling the holes to put the hooks in, because if we have to use big hooks and not little hooks, we're probably going to need to use bicycle hanging hooks.
Okay,
You know what I'm talking about?
I
I
guess.
wonder if my shovel hooks would work. My red ones.
Probably not. They're probably not big enough.
Okay.
You need something that sticks out a good bit.
Yeah, well, I mean, okay. You're not wrong. It needs to stick out some, but
It needs to stick out a lot.
because I made this system once before. And then it got torn out when we tore the covered area in front of my house that got torn out years ago. You probably don't remember you tore that system out once.
I don't remember that system being there.
Yeah, I had that system there, and that's why we had the buckets with the holes drilled in the bottom. What's nicer is cutting a hole with a screen in there, but I don't know if we can get that done. What do you think?
Getting the screen to stay.
Yeah, I'm going to go holes in the bottom, and then if we have to, we'll figure out something else.
Yeah.
Okay. Are you committing to doing that this weekend with me?
Maybe.
Okay, when are we turning maybe into a yes?
I don't know. It depends on what all we decide to do. Like yesterday's plan did not involve spending 3 to 4 hours driving to Nashville and back.
Okay. We have 2 days to get it done, though. Let's make our 1-3 thing to get that done, and then other weird things that come up just get weirded.
Okay.
When you say okay like that, I don't believe you're going to help me.
I'm not saying I won't. I'm saying I'll help you when it actually happens.
Okay, well, I need you to help me by getting lumber in the truck too,
Okay.
if you don't mind. Is there anything else that needs to go back to Lowe's?
I have no idea what needs
This
to
is
go
a
back to
great
Lowe's.
time to transition to Operation Eyesore. So I'm working on Operation Eyesore. He's not too happy about it because I'm tired of stuff everywhere. And I'm starting by returning all that Lowe's stuff. And then the next thing that'll happen is the car is up for being towed. I need you to move your truck, though,
Okay.
because we need to get to the back of the car.
Okay.
So, yeah, I've been going around little areas at a time and either getting rid of stuff or reorganizing stuff, which makes you grumpy.
It's not going to make me that grumpy this time because I don't have that much stuff out there and it all needs to go back to the sheep pasture.
Okay. Did you already move the stuff out of the way of the heavy equipment?
I have a pile that's over there off to the side and it's not interfering with them yet.
Okay. Are they there?
No.
Oh, okay.
They brought a dumpster in.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
The dumpster's probably in their way.
Yeah, Skane's girl says, I live on Eyesore Hill. Yeah, I was talking to Ryan Steve the other day. I'm like, I feel like it's this constant wave on the homestead of like stuff builds up. And then I'm like, we shall control the stuff. And then stuff builds up. And then we shall control the stuff. And then we have an event like we're having next weekend. And then we really get some stuff handled. And then it just sort of slowly marches back. And he's like, every homestead I've been on, Nicole, is like that, except for ones where people are killing themselves to keep that from happening.
Well, I mean, part of the problem is what do most people have when they walk in the door to their house? They have a table or a tray or a nightstand or something where you drop your keys and your wallet and whatever else. I park my four-wheeler in Taj Mahal, so that's where stuff gets, ripped off of the four-wheeler so I can throw more stuff on the four-wheeler to go back to the pasture. So there's a certain level of that's just going to happen, which is what most of the stuff in there right now was when we got the freeze and we were rushing to get stuff out of the barn so that we could move the sheep into the barn. All of it there were a couple of times that I didn't even turn the four-wheeler off. I think there was one time I didn't even get off of the four-wheeler. I just was pick up a bundle of post and toss them up against the chair. So, which is what most of that stuff is now.
Yeah. Yep. There was a lot. Okay, so Donna has a question. We moved our chicken run yesterday. 14 of 16 birds decided not to go in the hen house last night. They're fine, but wondering if they knew something and purposely stayed out. And Donna was close to where the tornadoes are. So animals can sense things. And that could be partially what's going on. Or also you just change their world. So I don't know how often you move your chicken run, but they may have just been confused chickens. Do you feed your chickens in the coop? I don't know. Like, they'll go back in for food in ours when we're doing that. But if you need to retrain them on the coop, you need to get them in the coop, shut them in the coop, make them realize it's a safe place to be. The other thing that'll keep chickens out of a coop is there's a weasel getting in there or something. And so then it's like it becomes an unsafe place and then they won't go back in. So it'll be interesting to see what they do tonight, right? So
my first question would be, were they out when you moved everything?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Because that would definitely throw small chicken brain into chaos.
Yeah. So let me know. I mean, like, Donna, let us know next week if they go in after tonight. And then Jason says, are you all going to add any new critters on the farm this year? Well, we've already added 11 new critters to the farm. We have 11 baby sheep, also known as lambs. And this morning, so we were talking about this, we need to move the ram over here so that he does not cause additional birthing chaos. So like, we're trying to time when the ram is with the ladies. And so we can't bring him back over here alone, though, because he'll be lonely and they're herd animals. So I was saying, let's bring, what's her name?
Bailey.
Bailey's the mom who had trouble producing enough milk originally. And her babies were born right before the coldest night of the entire like winter. So we've been supplementing her 2 male babies. And I was like, well, bring Bailey over with him because she probably won't get pregnant again because it's not time yet. She's still nursing. It's not impossible, but it's not likely. And then at about 2 to 3 months, we can wean her babies and then they can stay here anyway because it's just going to be like a sausage fest at my house again with rams once it's time for them to be separated from their moms. So so then we already have 2 of the boys here. And, giving a bottle twice a day means that he doesn't have to drive over to the next pasture in the middle of the night or at 8:30 at night or whatever. So we started talking about it. He's like, well, it'd be nice to bring a second ewe over just to have a little bit more sheep community here. And so we talked about bringing Amy over, which is one of the ewes that's a little bit more comfortable with us from a friendliness standpoint. And I was like, yeah, but she likes to be with her sister Allie. And then at that point, we've got all of it over here. So, and then like the number of paddocks we have on my property next door and across the street are not exactly enough, I don't think, to handle that. Yeah. Even in peak pasture growing time, because we're still rehabbing my house from all of the earthworks that we did and then that we keep doing. So, so I think what's going to happen is we're going to end up leaving the bottle babies over there and bringing the 2 girls over here who are friendly with us.
Yeah. And another thing that's going through my brain with that is I want one of the older ewes that will basically stand up to the ram if need be. And so that's why I was really looking at Amy or Allie, is especially with their babies, they're not going to, put up with any BS from the ram. And they can actually, they still got a couple of pounds on him, so they can handle themselves.
Well, and he's been turning into a good ram.
Yeah, he is, but he's
and we would like him to continue to turn into a good ram.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because it's a bummer when you've raised a ram and then you're like, you're no longer a good ram and you're leaving now.
Yeah, and that's kind of the thing about it is like, there is an aspect that he does not have a adult ram to learn from, so he needs a mature ewe to at least kind of educate him a little bit.
Yeah. But he seems to be doing well so far.
Yeah.
So Donna is feeding in the hen house. So it may have been the weather, Donna. Who knows? I did plant radishes, direct sow, and peas last weekend because we're in the middle of what we call in Tennessee first spring. What's first spring, Tactical? Can you define what that is?
It's when the weather gets straight up dyslexia.
It's like straight up spring like right now. We're having tornadic activity. We're having rain. It's warmer. The soils are not up to 60 degrees, but they're definitely up 40, 50 degrees. It's not going below freezing at night. And then what happens, Tactical?
Then we're going to get another freeze.
Well, like literally we could have another week of snow happen still. So I'm going to cross my legs. So that's first spring, followed by second winter, and then second spring, followed by the last frost, and then I think they call that blackberry winter, and then we'll have actual spring for about a day, and then it will be summer. That's usually what happens. There's some variation to that, but because of where we are and how the weather patterns work when cold pushes down from the north, it's just colder here. And when warm pushes up from the south, it's warmer. And so it can be snowing 20 miles north of us and warm here because of how those things hit. And that was probably the hardest thing for me to get used to versus Oregon, where it's pretty temperate and like the seasons just season. Basically, there's 4 of them in Oregon. Here, there are like, I don't know, there's 7 or 8 seasons that happen, and it's a lot harder on plants. I think that's why I kill rosemary so consistently.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it was last year we got snow. 3 days later, it was all gone. Like 8 days later, I had to go to Cookeville for something, and I got up to the top of the dam, and it looked like a winter wonderland.
Yeah.
Everything was still white.
Yeah.
Then, like a couple of weeks ago, we got snow. Everything's still frozen. And I think I went to the dumpster or something. And you get up to the top of the hill, and there was some patches of snow here and there. So it was bipolar opposite of last year.
Well, we're absolutely in a microclimate here. The cold hung on extra long in the holler.
Yeah.
And I think that's because we didn't get a layer of it, just held the warm down, which is what which happens sometimes.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like that little spot at the foot of the rock wall. But my comfrey, after a 5-degree night, didn't die down there. It definitely got beat back, but I was showing it to Tactical yesterday. I'm like, there it is. He's like, it's growing back. I'm like, no, it never stopped. It just had a few more leaves before that. All of that stuff came, and I think there's like a microclimate along that bottom of that wall that we could totally use for something interesting. The holler's like that too, where it has a tendency to not go like further down, because we're halfway up the hill here. Further down towards that creek, it's less swingy. But then when it does get cold, it's less swingy, so it takes it a while to heat up.
Yeah.
So what is he messing with?
I'm watching a cat stare very intently. And
okay, you talk to them.
And doing this.
Yeah.
And waiting and looking, about to try to jump up into the windowsill, and he finally committed.
Yeah, he did. That's how you break family heirlooms, by the way, because then he goes onto the bookshelf and then he starts throwing glass things off my bookshelf.
Yeah.
So I was afraid that's what had happened, and that's who it was.
Yeah.
He's my most clumsy cat, guys. So.
Well, he's got, what is it, vertigo?
Yeah, he has constant vertigo. So the germination's cool, and I'm going to do a second round of seeds. So we're playing seed roulette at this time of year. I'll do a second round of peas this week, just 1 week later, because the ones that do germinate are probably going to get frosted, but they might not.
Yeah.
And so then I want some coming up behind them. I didn't see that the peas had germinated when I went out there. But the issue I have is I have leaf mulch on top, and the wind keeps blowing it over the top of my seedlings, which can choke them out. So I go out there every day and I like pull the leaves off of the radishes. And I have lettuce growing inside, like right back behind Tactical's head. And that'll transplant out. I could direct sow some lettuce too, but I think I just keep a better eye on it here. So, so we have decent germination on the lettuce. Some of the other stuff isn't germinating that great. The chard is looking good, but I think it's, what's that stuff called? Fennel. The fennel is only like kind of germinating, and I'm not sure why. So we'll keep an eye on that. How long will it take you to get, because I'm about to run out of seedling space here. How long will it take you to get room for like 2 more trays at your place?
I mean, you can put 2 more trays down there right now.
But
I just don't have the lights up. And
how long would it take you to get ready for 2 more trays for real? Because we have to have a heat mat and lights.
I don't know.
Okay.
Depends on when I get to it.
Okay, but when you start, how many hours will it take you?
Not long.
Not long?
I mean, I got to rig something to hang the lights. That's
okay, but you have the lights.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's something that may have to happen in the next couple of weeks. I can fit, I think, 1 more tray here, and I'm doing peppers this weekend. And then by next week latest, I'm going to start herbs like basil, dill, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So tarragon, since I don't think we had self-seeding tarragon last year, so I didn't have to do it, but that's probably going to need to be seeded as well. We have been pulling out the rhizomes from the hops that I had in pots, and I planted these in as these tiny little rhizomes, like this big. And so when I went to take it out of the pot, I was digging the soil down the sides, and there was this big, like bigger than a dinner plate and about 8 inches thick puck of soil that would not come out. It was just hard. And so finally I put it like straight up, soaked it in water. That was the rhizome. So there was soil. It was like the worst twirly rooted tree you've ever seen from Lowe's sort of thing. So I sent that monster home with Ryan Steva, and I have 5 more monsters like that probably.
Yeah.
So we're going to be planting those in the actual soil. The first place we're going to plant it is near the walnut tree. And Ryan's like, are you sure it'll grow there because of the jugalone?
The what?
That's the thing.
Oh.
Yeah. That's the chemical that stops growth. And I was like, I don't know, but we're going to find out because we have some monster rhizomes. So we might as well just try it in a few different places and see how it goes.
There's lots of other stuff that grows right there perfectly fine.
Right. So that's what I told him. I was like, well, we've got like garden vegetables growing under there just fine. So I don't know. But it is supposed to keep weeds down. Does it keep weeds down in your garden, or do you keep weeds down in your garden?
I keep weeds down.
Yeah, so Tactical's like, I know, I'll put my garden under a walnut tree and tell everybody to sod off about the advice not to do that.
I look at the fact that there's stuff like, my God, the amount of stuff that I had to clear out over there. And so it's like the fact that I put plants in the general vicinity of a black walnut tree, I was like, I didn't even think about it.
They're literally right under it.
So I looked at it like, I can't run a lawnmower across here, so I may as well turn it to something I can put plants there.
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. How's your pond garden going?
I actually walked down last night to kind of look at that, and there's a good bit of stuff that is not happy about life, but it's still alive.
Yeah, and it was really cold here for a long time.
Yeah, and
what is that stuff? Mint?
I mean, I didn't look specifically to see, which plants were still alive, but as far as what I had put down there, it was rosemary, thyme, parsley, a couple of different kinds of mint.
Is the rosemary still alive there?
I didn't look. Some of it is.
Okay.
I saw a couple of them that were fine, but I put some yarrow in. I threw a bunch of different kinds of seed out. So, I mean, I threw all sorts of stuff down there. And of course, a bunch of, quote, weeds have come up too.
Yeah, so right now I'm seeing dead nettle from the wild edible side of things. Dead nettle's up for sure. Chickweed is up. And when I was working on the swale, the yarrow is coming back already. And the freeze was 2 weeks ago. Like the deep freeze was 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
So that's how fast that happens, guys. And my trees are a little past dormant for trimming. But Carrie's coming Friday to trim trees with me this week, and we're just going to do it anyway, because I've never really fully internalized the best way to trim fruit trees. And these have not gone too long. It's not like crazy fruit tree trimming needed. Like they got trimmed. Anything that had fire blight last year got cut off. And there's no fire blight yet this year. So what I want to do is get them trimmed, and then I'm going to spray them with whey, and then we'll see how they do. But that just means I don't have a lot of extra growth, because what traditionally happens to me with fruit trees is they end up like that peach tree back there, which is just like, it just needs somebody to come in and do a major job on it.
That thing needs a chainsaw.
Yeah, it gave us one peach once. I have aspirations of actually getting fruit off this property once in my life, besides strawberries and blueberries. Berries do great here. What happens with fruit trees is the late frost comes right during blossom set, and then they don't set fruit. So that's also a struggle here. Fire blight came last year, and it was the first feasible time that the orchard / food forest that I put in would start giving fruit. So then that also further stressed the trees. But when I treated them by spraying them, it was a combination of, I think I used some neem, and then I used whey, and then I used Dawn dish soap and some other stuff, garlic, some other. So I did this like whole treatment, and then I did it again a week later and never saw any more fire blight the whole time. So Margo says, I put one piece of chocolate mint in my aquaponics. The other is waiting for me to decide where to let it live. So Margo was at my house and took chocolate mint from here. My experience with chocolate mint has been it will take over the world. And that's not a bad thing, because that's one of my favorite base teas for the winter. So I'm happy when it takes over the world, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. How was last night's round roast?
It was good.
Do you remember last week's round roast?
No.
Yeah. So last week I made a roast in the crock pot, and it was kind of dry. Do you remember that?
I remember a roast-ish kind of thing that was dry, but I think I had that in some kind of juices.
Okay, so that was a round roast as well, and I had just gone low and slow on it because I was feeling like I didn't have a lot of time to cook. And it wasn't terrible, but the meat was drier than I'd like, despite the fact that it was in a sauce. And so this time I took out another round roast, and what's happening is I'm using up the last of the, like, any cow bits that are left. And I had been saving round roasts to turn into the pastrama, right? That cured meat I make.
Yeah.
And I just admitted to myself I wasn't going to do that right now, because what I am going to do is seedlings and gardens and that sort of thing. And so I was like, well, we might as well eat them. So what I did with this one is I put it in the sous vide for 12 hours with a dry rub on it. The dry rub was powdered garlic and onion and salt and turmeric and red sweet pepper and black pepper and salt, if I didn't say that already. So that was all in the rub. And I put it in the sous vide for 12 hours at 132 degrees. And last night I didn't get done with work until about, was it 7:30 or 8?
Something like
yeah,
that.
7:30 or 8. And I had sort of said, like, do you mind if we do a late dinner so that I can actually sit and enjoy it rather than eat really fast right before the 6 o'clock webinar? And he's like, cool, that's no problem. And I had some sliced ham in the fridge for snacks. So I took that out, and rather than heating up the Blackstone to sear it off, I took the blowtorch. I put the roast in a cast iron skillet, took the blowtorch and just blowtorched the outside to make a crust, and then straight up cut it So if the grain of the mussel goes, horizontal, I cut it vertical, so 90 degrees to the grain of the mussel. Was that one dry? No, it was not dry at all. And then on the carnivore challenge group, the carnivore life group on Telegram, I was like, hey, this is what we had. And the first thing I got was somebody telling me that round roast is always dry for them. And then Sean Mills had a way to make it not dry. I was like, sous vide for 12 hours at 132 and just sear the outside, no problem at all. So that is going to then get folded. So you know how we always you have food and then you fold it forward into something else. That's getting folded forward with I made sort of a ground lamb goulashy sort of thing without the noodles. It's getting folded with that, and it's going to be a round roast / lamb goulash dinner left overnight, and then we're on to leg of lamb tomorrow. So that's the plan. How should I cook the leg of lamb?
Oh.
He never knows. How do you guys think I should cook the leg of lamb? So other than that, how do you guys track your seedlings? Do you guys write down when you put what in and when it germinates? Because I realized the other day, I do this instinctually. So I started the seeds that are here last weekend, right before last week on Thursday's show that I did right after I got back from California. I really got them all the way set up by Friday with the heat mats and the lights and all that. I had germination by Saturday, which is fast, but not everything germinated right. And then by Monday, I had chard germination. And I have this calendar on the wall where I'm like, I planted them then, and then I got germination here. And then, garden, I had, I planted the radishes and the peas here, and I get germination there. Do you guys track that? Because I just track it on a wall calendar, but I'm wondering if somebody has a better system than I have. I don't know. I find it useful to know that because I know that my tomatoes germinate in 3 days with the system I use. And if they don't germinate within 4 days, then I know I probably have a problem, which is super helpful to know. And I only know that because I've been tracking it. Margot says I started making a spreadsheet last year so I could see how they did and didn't. Printed out new ones for this year and have started filling it out as I start seeds. That makes sense. Packrat says some plants under walnut trees. Haven't read the stuff about jugalones that we have, and occasionally will do their own thing anyway. Yeah. Plants also don't read books.
I was about to say.
So Prepper Pantry is coming together. It's been my singular focus every time I have a little extra time to think about something is to get the Prepper Pantry closer to back together so that I can put the things in the carport away, so that I can actually get the carport set up for the spring workshop. And it's all one big moving thing. And I have stuff in my house, in my mudroom that go in the Prepper Pantry. I have stuff under my bar that go in the Prepper Pantry. And I've been sorting through that as well. What I have is every can of paint that's ever hit the hauler has been under my kitchen bar, so it didn't freeze. And I've sorted through them 2 times, but yesterday I was sorting through them again because Ryan Steva has been helping me with this, and he needed to paint something that was never going to be looked at. And I was like, this is a great opportunity to use up paint that's perfectly useful. And so I had 2 gallons of Kills. And I was like, well, primer would be great in that situation. And he took one out and it had frozen at some point. So it's now by the trash bin. We're going to let that one either get recycled or dry out and throw it away. And then the other one got used for the eaves. And when that was done, he used some extra outdoor paint I had. Yeah. So just doing that. My goal is to get it down to where, so I now buy paint differently than I used to. When I first moved here, I would buy 5-10 gallons for a project, just painting the house, because that's how much you quote unquote need. Right. And I just buy a gallon or 2 at a time and get as far as I get. And then when I'm like, oh, I need another gallon, I go back and get another gallon. Because what I learned about Tennessee is paint doesn't store well here.
No.
So I try not to store a lot of paint. And yet I'm looking at my bar because all the stuff from under my bar is on top of my bar from me starting to go through it. I have probably 20 gallons
Yeah,
of
and
different things here.
looking at all of this is a prime example of why I'm like, yes, there will be one shade of black, one shade of white, one shade of gray, and maybe another color, and that's it. Like, that's my whole list.
Okay.
Like,
Hey, Tactical, how many different kinds of shirts do you wear?
gray,
He wears a gray t-shirt. How many different kind of pants do you wear?
just black.
Yeah. So
Same.
he wears a uniform and it makes his whole life easier.
I especially like with pants and pockets, bouncing back and forth between like true spec and 511 is irritating because you go to reach for your knife or your flashlight and it's like, oh yeah, on this pair of pants it's an inch further back than it was on the pair of pants that I was wearing yesterday. No, just one pair of pants. Everything stays the same. It's been that way for, I don't know, a decade now.
This is also the man who, when he house sits for me, brings his own plate and his own fork and spoon and his own cup up here.
That's not necessarily true.
It's usually true.
I brought my lid up here because it was easier.
And your cutting board and your knife.
The cutting boards came up to run through the dishwasher.
Oh, so you stopped bringing your plate that you like better than my plates.
Occasionally that plate will end up here.
Yep.
Usually when that plate ends up here, it's because I had something on the plate and I was cooking up here, so I got it out of my fridge to bring up here, and then I just ate off the plate.
Every time I go out of town, I'm like, I wonder what parts of Tactical's kitchen's in my kitchen now. Right now, that's your Tupperware pile over there. Yeah. He also washed all his Tupperware up here in the dishwasher.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is fine. It's just funny because I'm like, I'm heading home. There's going to be parts of Tactical's kitchen in my kitchen, and I'm going to need to send it down with him again. So that's what happens, like the rotating things. I appreciate you house sitting, but I like to make fun of you about bringing all your cooking stuff up here.
Yeah.
I have discovered I really like frying eggs in my new that skillet over there that's not cast iron. I have a new skillet, and it's I got it because sometimes you just want to cook with stainless steel. And so this stainless steel skillet I got at, what is, I don't know, it's H something, I don't even know the brand. It's a non-stick stainless steel LH professional cookware. It has a really thick base here, and it's one piece, so it's not like got the separate thing that can break off that's different. And then it's got rounded, it's like a nice rounded side. So this works great. The thing about cooking with non-stick stainless steel is you use oil. It's not non-stick like you don't use oil. Oil is what you use. So that thing's been great. It cooks shrimp great. It cooks it cooks eggs great, and it weighs less than the cast iron skillet. I do usually mostly cook with cast iron, but sometimes I want to cook with that. Yeah, and I could get that sticker off. I could take the torch to it, but then, I don't want to accidentally.
It's okay. It's professional.
It's professional cookware. I have basically gotten down to where I just want professional grade appliances. That hood, that professional grade hood. Love it. Commercial hood. I want a commercial range one day, and a commercial fridge, and a commercial dishwasher in here. Yeah, Margot says, I love my stainless steel pans and pots. Yeah, so I've always used pots that were stainless steel, but I've never been a fan of the stainless steel frying pan because the ones that come with the kits you buy are square. And so they the sides are too, I don't know, square. And then I realized while I was at an Airbnb that I really like that shape. And then I saw one at Home Goods and I bought it. So that's the addition to my kitchen. And I'm to the point now with the hood in where I can hang my pots. And so they're not just everywhere in my way. So that's been kind of a fun thing too, just for space efficiency. So let's see. Truck repairs. You wanted to talk about truck repairs?
I don't even know what I was going to say about that.
So nobody believed me that there was something wrong on the truck when I was backing down the driveway the other day and I couldn't stop all the way until I got to the road. I was accused of hitting the brakes too hard.
Well, I mean, I got in the truck and drove it back over here, and the brakes seemed to be working just fine.
Were you driving frontwards?
On the road.
On the road.
Where it was level. So when I get in and the brakes don't really act up at all any different than what they did when we got the truck, I was like, well, seems fine to me.
So then Nighthawk goes to borrow the truck, and the same thing happened to him on the driveway, backing down. And then he drove it back up and was like, never mind, I'm taking my own car. That was scary. He was also accused of stomping the brakes too hard. So I'm like, it's got to go to a mechanic. 2 of us have had this issue. And what was happening is the front brakes were locking up. And my understanding of how ABS works is that's not supposed to happen. It's supposed to like pulse, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm like, well, the ABS must be messing up. And for some reason it's locking. So then we take it to the mechanic, and the mechanic calls me. You know what the mechanic accused me of?
Stomping
on the brakes too hard. And I was like, but more than one person had to have. I'm like, really, there's something not right. And so I had resigned myself to nobody can figure out what's wrong with the brakes. And Tactical's like, it might just need to brake a little bit more before we find the problem. So he actually had like given me a little bit of grace and acknowledged that it's too sensitive and perhaps there is something wrong with the brakes.
Oh, I had played with it, and it was like, because the mechanic also called me, and it was like, yeah, it seems to be that situation where it's kind of broken sometimes, and you have to have it in the exact right set of circumstances where you're facing uphill on a wet day at a slow speed on gravel with your tinfoil hat on and a chicken flying overhead in order for it to happen. And so it might just need to brake more before anybody is able to actually figure out what's wrong with it.
So the mechanic, after talking to me, he said he woke up at 2 a.m. and was like, wait, maybe the back brakes aren't working. And he checked the back brakes, and guess what, guys? There were no back brakes working on my truck, probably the whole time I've been driving the thing, because I've always noticed the brakes were slow. Like I was like, gosh, it takes a lot of time to stop.
And I also said that when I talked to him, it was an offhand comment, but I said something along the lines of, it almost seems like the back brakes aren't working.
Yeah.
Or aren't stopping, because it's like, yes, the front brakes locked up, but the back brakes should have still stopped the truck, and they didn't. So it was like, that's a little bit odd.
I mean, in good news, like the back brake pads have no wear on them at all since we've put new ones in.
Yeah.
Because they weren't doing anything. So anyway, that's fixed. And I'm glad, like I'd rather discover it that way than getting it in an accident. And yeah, the proportioning valve was the problem, Pippinized. It was clogged up, seized up, something. They were able to clean it out, and it's worked ever since. And he said, if you have that problem again, then we'll switch the valve out to a new part. But he thinks it was just, you know, we bought a truck from somebody who wasn't really driving it for a while. And I had the mechanic go through and do a whole bunch of stuff on it to make like the drive belt and all this other stuff, just because I'm like, it's been sitting around. And you never know how people have treated a vehicle. It's a used vehicle. I'd rather just put the money in now on stuff like that and make sure all the brakes are good and get new tires and change all the fluids and blah, 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 spark plugs, like all of it. So it didn't occur to me to check if the back brakes were actually working, though.
Yeah, well, I mean, I specifically said when we took it in, I want all the brakes checked, and
they checked the pads and the rotors. And,
yeah, which is what you would expect them to check. It's not like, and since that got done, nobody's looked at the rear brakes. So I'm sure that when they popped the drums off, that there was some surface rust on the actual drums where they should be nice and shiny from the friction of the brake pads, but nobody's done that since we did it, so nobody would have seen that since.
Yeah. So anyway, that was lucky, I thought.
Yeah.
It's actually lucky it happened that way because my free slide down that driveway was at 3 miles an hour. And I couldn't exactly control exactly where I was, but I didn't hit anything. I didn't hit anybody on the road. And when I got to the road, it stopped. And then I was irritated with the whole situation.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's a fun Zello message you got from me about that.
I don't remember where I was.
You were at the pasture. I was coming over to the pasture.
Yeah, and so I think I got bits and pieces of a message.
Yeah. So that's farm life. You need a truck. You need the truck to work. And I'm glad to have the truck back. We have 4 more raised beds coming for the garden move right now.
Yeah.
That look on your face was funny. Do you know where we're going to put 4 beds?
No.
Do you know where we're going to put 2 of them?
I know where we're putting one of them.
I think we can get 2 more down there if we do it right.
I'll measure it, but
Yeah.
it'll be tight.
Yeah. So we've been using the Vivor raised beds for this. I have a link in the show notes if you're interested in getting them. Yes, I get a commission if you use that link. No, I don't use them because I get a commission. I use them because they are I paid $89 a bed. And it's all metal. And they're kind of a pain in the butt to put together because they have about 40,000 wing nuts and bolts, right?
Yes.
At least 40,000. But they aren't wood and they're not going to rot. And in Tennessee, with the amount of moisture we get, there's a lot of rotty, woody stuff. So having tested these for about 6 months now, like I know I see some weak spots where they have cross braces to keep them from bulging out. And when you put the soil in, you want to be careful to build it up from the bottom up underneath those cross braces real well so they don't sink down and pull it in. Or if you just throw a bucket of dirt over the top, it can pull them in. The weight down on the top of those crossbars. What Tactical's been doing, like he actually cracked the code. They put the bed together, you start filling it in, then you put the first layer of cross braces, and then you finish filling over that to the next one, and then you put the next ones, and that works pretty well.
And I actually pull the cross braces up and with my hand push dirt underneath them so they start in an elevated position and have the ability to settle.
So that being said, they end up looking pretty good, and I think they'll last at least a decade here. We'll see. But so we got 4 more coming in. I definitely want 1 to 2 more in that garden space, depending on how we see the space working out. And then I just got 2 extra because I figured we're going to find somewhere we want them. And they were on sale for $89 at Vivor. So that's so they're $129, or if you create an account and log in, they're $89. And then you can use the coupon code VV promo, and that takes another 5% off, which saves you a couple more dollars. But yeah, but I've been pretty happy with that. Yeah. So Margot says we live in the land of salt. Nothing metal outside lasts. Yep. Don't get the Vivor beds, Margot. That's not what you want. That's in Florida. So that's coming together, and we may end up putting 2 over at base camp because I'm pretty sure that our new tenant at base camp is going to want to do some raised beds for her stuff. So we'll see.
Yeah.
Base camp is getting a new deck.
Yeah.
Is that exciting?
It needs to happen.
Yeah, it needs to happen. And I was hoping to pre-paint all the lumber. And then the person, Ken Ash, was like, do you have dried pressure-treated lumber, Nicole? And I was like, no, but apparently I needed a lumber list from you for the other deck so that I can plan to buy that ahead of time when we get ready to do the other deck, and I can pre-stain it, and then it can be put together, and then you just touch up where the cuts are. So as a result, I'm going to be learning how to actually use my paint sprayer soon. And my plan is to use the paint sprayer on the plywood I bought for the swim spa, because it doesn't have to look pretty. And so I can mess it up. I can do it outside away from the house so I don't accidentally overspray onto something else. And then hopefully with those, I can get enough skill to be able to handle the sprayer well, because I think that'll be a huge time saver for all of the painting we have to do around here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right now I have a half painted front door.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to finish that today too. Do you believe me?
Nope.
He doesn't believe me. What's been going on with the Holler neighbors and community?
I don't know. I've been in my own world for a while.
Yeah. The Eversoles are moving into their new place. I don't know if they've moved yet, but they're moving off grid from being on grid, which is a big change. And I'm actually kind of keen, after they've been there about a month, to see if they'll come on a Holler Neighbor show with me and just talk about what that's been like.
Yeah.
Yeah. So they're moving. We have a new person moving in. One of the cool things about having a Holler Neighbor situation is when there's weather, there are neighbors to take care of things like your animals. So
Yeah.
Nighthawk's dog you threw his dog in yesterday before the weather came, right?
Yeah.
And then I got off my webinar and Tracy, I think, had reached out about Bear. But maybe it wasn't Tracy yesterday. Anyway, she reached out one day this week. She's like, Nighthawk's not home. It's Monday. Nighthawk's not home yet. What do you think we should do about Bear? Because it was sort of later than usual. And then she was like, never mind, Nighthawk just go.
Yeah.
So there's somebody keeping an eye on things, and I think that's super helpful. But we don't officially have a Holler Neighbor dinner scheduled for Sunday, but I'm going to schedule one. Okay. And I'm pretty sure the Eversoles won't show up because they've been putting a lot of time on moving, but I'm pretty sure Nighthawk will. Yeah. And I think we should just keep that going on Sundays.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Sunday dinners have been fun. They happen at 6, and then by 8 o'clock everybody leaves because I'm starting to fall asleep in my chair. Mm-hmm. So that's usually what happens. And we haven't played games in a while. I miss that. Okay. Do you want to play some games? No, that's why. See, he won't play games with me, so I got to get Nighthawk down here to do it. So Margot wants to know what paint sprayer I got. Margot, I bought this from Lowe's about 4 years ago, and it's like a big airless sprayer. And I used it to, I mean my partner in the property used it to paint the duplex that I have with him in Nashville. So he got good at spraying as part of that. And I was like scraping ahead of him so he could, and like helping mask stuff. That's what I did. So that sprayer has been here the whole time. Steve Eversole has used it a bunch, but I just have never actually used it because, like, for example, I could have used it on the roasting shack, but I didn't want to dilute the paint I got to go through the sprayer more efficiently. And it was a super thick paint because I wanted it to, because I purposely got a very thick, very covery, very weatherproofy paint for that, because it was its first time being painted since we got it here. And it really needed a good, like, detail-oriented paint. I could have done a couple coats, I guess, by diluting it. And actually, the other thing I could do is paint my house with the sprayer with it diluted, because it's a cinder block house. So it's not like I need to worry about rot coming in the cinder blocks. But I don't know what brand it is. Eric says, happy 1,000. Thank you, Eric. I appreciate it. 1,000 episodes. I never thought I'd get here when I was on episode 8. When I was on episode 8, I wasn't sure there was going to be an episode 9. And then I got to episode 20 and I was like, I made it to 20. The podcast is going to survive. But I think a lot of people start podcasts and get really discouraged, because what'll happen is, like, my first podcast episode had 89 downloads. Yeah. And then my second one had 14. And one of those was my mom, and one of those was me. So that's really 12. So it's discouraging when you don't see the community action like we have here in the comments, or you don't see any of the growth. And then when you get, you hear somebody like Jack Spirko who has 250,000 downloads, which I'm nowhere near that. And you're like, man, he had that done in like 2 years. He was up to 100,000, which is pretty good.
Yeah, but he's also very early mover in the space and completely different background as far as not having to learn the tech or the marketing aspect of it. So it's
So he's also a very different content. So he
yeah,
appeals to a more prepper oriented audience than I do. Like I have a lot of y'all are preppers and homesteaders. I'm a gentler podcaster. I am not feeling like it's my job to engage on current affairs all the time or whatever. I'll talk about them. Like there's a lot going on right now that I've talked about. But at the same time, it's not, I don't feel like it's my job to teach you about the news. And he is using that as a lens for what will happen in the future. It's one of the reasons I'm friends with him is I like talking about that stuff. But I feel like there's a lot of pundits who talk about that stuff. And what I want to talk about is how we opt out of that system and build a life that we're happy with and set ourselves up as much as possible not to be impacted by the day-to-day turbulence of the news. And the last 2 weeks have been a really good example. So ever since the inauguration, there are headlines coming out that make some of us really happy and some of us really sad, and then something like I call it the tariff wars. That's what I referred to it as when I was in California to my brother-in-law. I'm like, oh, the tariff wars have started. And I called it that because it's like we're going to put a 50% tariff on whatever, insert name of country here, and the country's like, we're going to put one back, and they're like, never mind. Right? And it's not going to happen that way in every case, guys. But if you get really emotionally wrapped up in that back and forth to the point where you don't get your stupid radishes and your peas into your garden, like what are you doing? You're having an endorphin rush from the news, and it's interesting, but it's kind of like watching TV. Like it's
that's
not
exactly what it is right now.
it's not a productive part of your day. And so am I interested in it? Kind of, because like for the first time in my life, somebody's been elected to office who is making dramatic changes as a result of their election. And you could say Obama did or Biden did, but they didn't. They made some little tweaks around the edges that really pissed people off. But like this is wholesale, I'm going to try everything sort of stuff going on. And from a political nerd standpoint, it's interesting to watch that. So I've been watching that. I feel like I'm getting bitten by a fire ant in my sock, but I don't see the fire ant. So, okay. This is my sock. I just got like a sting, Phil, on my toe while I was talking to you guys. So anyway, that will impact my viewership too, I think.
Yeah. I was just making the point that it's a lot of times people want to compare themselves to another podcast or whatever, and it's like your start is going to be completely different than this other person's start, because it's not just you're starting a podcast. There's 900 different variables in that. There's variables you don't even see, like the algorithms.
Yeah.
I mean, you said something on your third episode that triggered an algorithm, so it deprioritized your stuff, whereas this other person said the correct word and the algorithm, pushed their stuff more.
Yeah. And by the way, I'm not shadow banned. I don't think.
Okay.
I think I'm just not as edgy or controversial.
Yeah.
And I get controversial sometimes, but it's not my nature to be on the cutting edge of controversy, nor do I want to spend my time there. So I prefer more solutions oriented stuff. And Pack Rat says, I appreciate having somebody local to us in Middle Tennessee talking about all the things, very real lessons learned. Yeah, I'll share my mistakes too. But also, Haas says Jack gets his most views talking about the news. And that's true.
Yeah.
Whenever I have episodes where I'm talking about current events, I get about 10 times the views on YouTube.
Yeah.
I get about double the downloads on my podcast. And when I talk about something useful like how to plan your garden and how to start seeds, Not as much. So that's fine. You just thumbs up. Okay, the answer is it's not a fire ant, but there's a sliver in my toe.
Okay.
I don't know how. It's probably because I've been running around barefoot in the bark dust. Spirica urges people to write down the crisis of the day, review it after a year, and see how little of it is relevant. That's actually true. I'm watching some of my more left-leaning contacts like lose their minds right now, like absolutely lose their
Yeah.
minds, and they're like, "This change is being made by Trump, and this is going to be the like overblown result." And I'm like, "Can we just give it a month and see like, A, that change is being made. We don't know if it's going to be made, or if like Congress is going to do something, or Supreme Court's going to do something, or he's just saying it to get a different change, right?"
Yeah.
And B, is that really what's going to happen? Like having the money follow the child in education, is that really going to suck all the money out? Well, maybe. Or maybe parents are going to want their kids to go to a local school, and the local school is the government school, and money will stay there. And maybe other parents who have kids that are not being served by that system will be able to get them what they need from an educational standpoint. So, yeah, I don't know. It's like constant world is ending reporting is crazy. Although CNN's been more balanced lately. What's that? I read this is amazing. I saw a headline. I don't remember what it was. And I read the article. You know what the article was about? The headline. What? Usually I see a headline and I'm like, this article doesn't even like answer that question if it's asking a question or have much to do with that. And that headline makes it seem like something totally opposite is happening. So that was amazing. That was and I was like, whoa, this is CNN. I'm impressed, CNN. You actually wrote about something that you said you were writing about and you put the things in there with some citations. Interesting.
Well, I mean, they might have gotten the message when Trump filed a lawsuit against, I think it was CBS, that the requested dollar amount is more than the company is worth.
Yeah, well, that's the deal. So we're on to the brainstorming session of today's show, and this requires audience participation, y'all. I was thinking about this the other day, that a lot of the journey for homesteaders, and when you read homesteaders' stories from even the 70s, you have a husband and wife often, and one of them works full-time and the other one holds down the homestead. And that full-time day job is required for the homestead to function. So then I got to thinking, well, that seems a little weird because we're raising this like premium product here, and we are putting our hearts and souls to it. And like if you're doing homesteading well, you're cutting expenses, except it's so easy to get sucked into the homestead glamour homestead glamour, if you're listening, aspect of things where your homestead requires lots of monetary inputs to make it happen. But I think about how my great grandparents homesteaded, and they like packed their stuff in a wagon and went west and got a homestead in Idaho and worked on that, like hunting, fishing, growing stuff. It was a subsistence living situation. And eventually they left that because it wasn't going well and went to Oregon. And then things went well there. And all along, yeah, my great grandfather was taking jobs and then also working the land and growing the food and preserving the food and raising a family and all of those things. And I don't think that's the reality we need to have. Like if we talk about or think about homesteads, we should be able to make a living off our homestead if we put our full-time effort in. Otherwise, what's the point? And it kind of has two sides to that coin. One is if you produce a lot of your own stuff on your homestead, you don't need to buy as much stuff, which means you don't need to earn as much money. But it's really nice to be financially secure in case your car blows up, right? So Margot says, I think too many people like to have too many things. That is something I'm starting to embrace more. But I also like, if you look at my kitchen, I have all the, like, I was using a meat slicer yesterday. I got an entire Black Forest ham for half the price as if I bought it at the deli. And I have a meat slicer, so I sliced the whole thing up, put it in little packages, and put it in the freezer, except for the stuff I wanted out for this week. And now, like, so then that's, it was a $30 ham. So that would have been at least $60. So then I can take, in my head, I'm taking $30 off the price of that meat slicer, which was $140. So then it's $110 left because I've gotten $30 of value out of it. Well, I've gotten way more than $30 of value out of it over the years. But also, like, it's a thing, Margot. It's a thing that takes up space in my kitchen. And because it's here, I don't have room for other things. I've actually gotten rid of my kitchen aid because I don't ever use it. Like, so a friend of mine's babysitting it till April when I actually need it for preparing food for the spring workshop. And then she can have it back again. It's like permanent loan to somebody else who can actually use it to do such things as bake bread and make cookies or whatever else, gets made with that. I don't even mix my meat with the KitchenAid for sausage and that sort of thing. But I have a meat grinder, so I have things too. But one of the things I've been doing as part of the purge, because part of my word of the year is hone, is really looking even at all the homesteading stuff I have and realizing I don't need it. Like, I have an electric tomato saucer that I tested out last year, and it was for Vivor, and I don't love it. And I use this like tomato cone in my hand to make tomato sauce, and it takes the skin and the seeds off. And that one, I mean, it works, and other people can't imagine, like doing sauce without one of those machines. But, the old way to do sauce before even that would have been just cook down your tomatoes until it's sauce and skin them first. And you can skin them and seed them first, and then you have sauce. Like, no blender, just cook them down and stir, and eventually you end up with sauce. It's not as smooth as if I put it through a blender or food processor, but it still is fine. So I'm also thinking about how many of different things I have on the homestead. Like, I have 3 pressure canners here, I think, still. I had 4. My high number was 4, not counting the electrics.
Yeah.
And that's because when people started canning, they'd like get sick of it, hate canning, and drop their canners off at my house. And then a friend of mine last year had to move, and she was like, I don't have a pressure canner, and where I moved out of won't let me come back in and get my pressure canner. And now I'm screwed. And I'm like, here's a pressure canner because I have 4. So I'll be unloading those. I'll be unloading that tomato juicer. In fact, I should probably, so next weekend we have the seed exchange. I think I'll put out to the group that I have these other like swap meet style things to go, because there's just no point. Like the tomato juicer, it'll be great for somebody, not me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's my second experience with the tomato juicer, that I was like, yeah, this is a great contraption for not me. But like the simplest solution works. And then other times I love the appliance. Like, I really like the meat grinder and the meat slicer and some of the other things. I'm trying to think of like the sous vide. That's a kitchen tool I love having. The space station.
Mm-hmm.
You like the space station, don't you? The space station, guys, is my espresso maker. And it's probably the 3rd space station that's been here since he met me. But right now I have a Gaggia, Gaggia, which is an Italian brand. And he doesn't like it as much as I do, but I like it. The quality of the coffee that comes out of it is great. And I can clean all up in there. So there's not a weird mold buildup somewhere where you have to take the whole case apart. Like, the way they set it up, you can clean everything. And that's actually what I like about it. So then you don't have lurking mold in your coffee maker. He doesn't like it because the water receptacle doesn't take as much water as the other one I had.
Well, there's that, and it's also on the same schedule that I'm on. So about 7 times out of 10, I walk in the door to get a cup of coffee just in enough time to hear it turn itself off to save power and water, which it uses both to shut itself down. So I get to listen to it turn itself off and then turn it right back on.
So you were happier when I was drinking more coffee?
Well, I mean, this one has a shorter stay on cycle.
Yeah. You keep thumbs upping. That's interpreted as a... That's really funny. Anyway, so back to the topic at hand. Like, what ideas do you guys have for ways to make money on the homestead? Because it seems to me when I see things for sale, like somebody in my community is selling their chicken eggs for $4 a dozen right now. $4 a dozen. How much are chicken eggs at the store right now?
No idea.
Like, I think it's time for us to get over this. We have to keep everything as cheap as possible. Eggs are over $5 a pound at the store. You know why?
Well, I know they've killed like what, millions of chickens.
So there's been this egg shortage causing the prices to go up. Tom's like, "Can I buy them all?" Exactly. And then homesteaders are like, "Here are my premium organic eggs where I'm making $1 a dozen profit, which is nothing. And I'm selling 5 dozen a week, which is $5 profit, and $4 a dozen. Probably losing money at $4 a dozen if they're honest with themselves." So I think it starts kind of twofold. Like, we trade with each other, but maybe we also start. Is it just that we need to charge fair value, or is it that we need to look at things like what ideas do you guys have for getting extra income? Because my ideas are like, a lot of people are adding tiny homes and rentals on their property. So I look at Jessica, who did the coordination of the East Tennessee stuff. She's taken her camper that I think they lived in for a bit and gotten it all decorated out, and now it's a rental for Airbnb. And I think she has a cabin for rent there too, because the property they bought has extra stuff. You can put tiny homes on your property. You can do a hip camp, but then that's bringing people on your property. You can do property tours. People are pretty interested in seeing how homesteads work. But what else could we do? Because that's all sort of like an agritourism thing. So I think like there's agritourism, there's classes, and there's selling your product. And I feel like I'm missing something in the math there. Is it just that we need to run 1,000 head of cattle?
No, I'm trying to figure out how to phrase this, but I'm watching somebody right now do an Airbnb setup that I think is a horrible idea.
What is it?
It's the fact that they have nothing and they're going to build a bunch of stuff to put on Airbnb.
Oh, okay.
And the reason I say that I think it's a horrible idea is I've seen, just from observation, Airbnb work in two situations. A, I have this room, building, cabin, whatever that's not being used, all listed on Airbnb. So your investment is minimal. The other aspect is where somebody builds a very unique thing and it's different than everything else in the area. And so they have, I don't know how to say, there's an attractive thing.
I think the way it works best is when you pair something like that with agritourism or with a local like tourism thing, right? So somebody with extra land in the middle of Oklahoma, not near a hunting location or something, gonna have a harder time renting it than like here near the lake.
Yeah.
What happens with Airbnbs here is that they are seasonal, so you get a lot from Memorial Day through Labor Day, and then you have another surge in the fall.
Yeah.
And if you can like, and I don't know now what that's like in this area, because every time I think I'm going to do an Airbnb, I rent the base camp to somebody in our community, which makes me way happier to have somebody who listens to the podcast here than a bunch of strangers through, right? Like,
Yeah.
I think it'd be cool for us to have a couple cabins here that people who listen to the podcast can come weekend and check out the place or for a couple days, you know?
Yeah.
Like the camper,
And-
I think I might open that up soon.
Yeah, and that's like one of the examples I've seen with something local was they built like a yurt or something, but it was like a luxury hotel. And it was a very unique thing. So I think, and it doesn't necessarily have to be that. It's what's the add-on to it? But
Yeah,
I
what's
mean,
the allure? And then price it. If you keep it really nice and price it a little bit below market, you'll actually differentiate on price, which is not my favorite thing to do. But you'll get more people in, and then when you get good reviews, then you're doing well.
yeah,
Which
and
is how I had base camp. I was like, this is base camp. It has almost no kitchen supplies, but this is what's specifically in the kitchen. And we are priced below market because I haven't all decorated it out. That's what I did.
yeah, and part of the reason I brought that up to start with is like with the I just completely lost my train of thought.
Yeah.
You already have the cabin on the property. It's what do you have? So we have access to the lake, we have the animals, we have stuff like that around here. So it doesn't take a whole lot of effort. And what can you build off of what you have
Right.
is kind of the point that I was getting at with all of that.
Yeah. And so here's what Packrat says: seed starts. Okay, so let's talk about this as a
Yeah.
business idea. You start on your homestead, you start seedlings every year for your garden. It's not hard to start twice as many, right?
Yes.
And then when you start twice as many, you can sell them. And it's actually not as hard to sell them as you think, as long as you're willing to sell them. So the other thing that I see a lot of homesteaders doing is it's like they view selling their stuff as it's dirty to sell. But it's not. You have something somebody wants and they want to give you money for it. There's nothing wrong with that. You just have to tell your story. You have to help them understand why your seedlings are better than a 6-pack at Lowe's, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, right now I may actually end up with extra seedlings this year. I don't usually end up with seedlings, and I tend to give them to my friends in the homestead community first before selling them because they give me plants. And so for me, it's like, well, I could sell if I went in with the idea I'm gonna sell seedlings, I would double or triple what I'm starting now, and then start advertising now for I'm going to have seedlings. This is what the price is going to be. They'll be ready probably after this date, and blah blah blah. Get your pre-order. And I did that one year, and I made about $500. Now, $500 doesn't pay all the bills for the year, but if you think about like Matt and Gabby, what they've done with their nursery, that's kind of how they started. They were like, well, we have these seedlings, so we'll sell them. And we have vegetables, so we'll sell them. And pretty good at finding these different varietals that are good in the area. And next thing you know, they're running a nursery. So that's something you can do, is run a nursery. And at a certain scale, you have to get permitted for that. But,
I mean, that's also one of those
herbs and tinctures, niche products that are valued locally and scale poorly. Like, it'd be really good if somebody could figure out how to crack the nut of the pawpaw market. We come into homesteading, we read about how good pawpaws are, and then we can't find any, and we buy the trees and we kill the trees. For 1 week every year, somebody can go harvest a boatload of pawpaws and be like, I'm selling pawpaws for this much. Yeah. And you have to get them when they're ripe, and there's no other option because pawpaws do not travel well.
Yeah.
That's a huge niche market.
Yeah.
Yeah. And here's another one. I had the idea of school tours for kids to see the animals. Yeah, if you get your home, like Jessica could do this because she's got a really cute homestead. I don't know how I haven't been out to see it in person. I've just seen pictures. But assuming she's got the animal systems up and the gardening systems up, that would make a really good farm tour for schools.
Yeah.
And then you charge for that. Got it. And then, I'm hearing Matthew seriously talk about liability. Yeah. We have these signs. So if you come on an agritourism property to do agritourism things, there are some protections in the code in Tennessee against being sued already. And then when you have an event, you can add event insurance on top of that. So Tom says rent pool time.
You're already looking at doing
I'm
that.
planning to do that this year. The reason I haven't done it yet is I can't promise the pool will be up and running in the winter.
Yeah.
And I want to make sure there's a way they can take a shower.
Yeah.
So, but I'm probably going to open that up to some close friends anyway, who I would let into this shower.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, great time for gardening talk. There was a nursery here that had homeschool classes on planting seeds. She's always booked out. Yeah, that's another good idea. Any other ideas, guys? Baked goods tend to do well if you can get people excited about them. We have a lady here who makes fry pies, and she sells out of fry pies every week. But how do you go from that to a business? Because when I'm thinking about it, like the sheep are a great example. If we max out our gross revenue on the sheep, it's going to be about $3,500 this year.
Yeah.
And $3,500 is not a full-time living, which means, and that's before expenses. That's not profit. So I would say the profit out of that is nowhere near that. That means that we need 300 sheep every year that we sell, or the price of the sheep goes up.
The only other way I see monetizing that is you find a way to monetize something other than the meat.
Yeah. Packrat says Matt and Gabby have locally proven plant varieties, which is something the local big box store garden centers cannot provide. And then, so then look at Billy Bond.
Yeah.
Like he's running a homestead, and his profit model, or the way he pays for it, is that he has enough of a YouTube following that he's also able to do, make money from the content creation.
Yeah.
And that's, what is he at? Last time I looked, he was at 25,000 or so. He's probably more than, maybe I'm mixing his channel up. But anyway, so that's, content creation can help. But then if we all do content creation, at what point do we saturate the market?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I think that market's pretty saturated.
I would never discourage somebody from doing content, though, because you never know if you're the one that everybody's going to be interested in.
Yeah.
And if nothing else, it's a really good journal. And you start developing community like we have here with Skane's Girl and Packrat and Margot and Tom and Pippinized and Homestead Glamour is here. Homestead Glamour is coming to the workshop, I believe. So content creation market is saturated AF. Yeah. And it's going to be more, Margot, because now AI is developing content. And so then, it's hard to tell what's content and what's not content. Well, I just wanted to bring the topic up. I would love to hear you guys' thoughts on that. And if you have thoughts after the show, like email them to me. I think this is a good starting list. I think like how assessing it, like if I spent full time on the homestead, how would I make money? The answer may be pasture chickens for your homestead, or it may be more sheep, or it may be doing consults out at other homesteads. Like a lot of our guys go to other homesteads and help them get going. So that's a whole nother one that we didn't even think of, right? Create a bunch of different revenue streams rather than trying to dig one big revenue river. Exactly. So there's lots of different ways to do it. I think the reason it isn't done more is it's hard. And I think it's despicable that it's hard because this lifestyle, I believe, is more environmentally friendly than a lot of other lifestyles. And so it's like it's disincentivized to try to live like this, where you're connected with nature.
Which is the way we're supposed to.
Which is the way we're supposed to live, and it's healthier. But okay. Yeah. So they're using a lot of AI in music. Yeah, they're using AI everywhere. I'm taking an AI challenge. It's a 28-day challenge that I think they're still accepting people in for a little bit, and you can catch up because it's only been the first week. But it's been interesting because I've used AI, for a couple of years now, but this is like a much deeper dive into ChatGPT. And then every time I do something, I'm like, oh, I found this other tool and this other tool and this other tool. And it's very interesting. And like I was using Opus Pro to put captions on videos or to find shorts. And that worked for like half a year, and then it stopped working because people figured out what was up there. And now now I use it to put captions on, but I think I'm probably going to cancel it because it's, it's just not good. And I can get captions on my videos a different way easier.
Well,
So half the time they're not working. I can't remember the name of the group. Hold on. It's Joshua Hale is doing the challenge. Somebody's asking me who's doing the challenge. And let me pull up. He usually sends an email. Boop, 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 boop. I always forget the name of his company. So hold on. So he just decided to do this thing. And if only there was a link here. AI courses. I'll click on that and hope it gets me there. He does AI courses. Oh, it's joshuahale.io. It's his name. So if you go to joshuahale.io, on the far right, there's a 28-day chat GPT challenge. It costs $100, guys. I've already made that back in 1 week in some productivity things it solved for me. And if you click sign me up, you can get involved with that. And then we have a daily prompt in the morning that we try. And then we have a group that we're talking about our results with or answering questions with. And what's been helpful for me on that has just been that I'm learning some new ways to make my prompts stronger. This first week has been more about sort of getting started with ChatGPT, which I've been using for years. But I still learned stuff this week. So, like I was like, well, the first week we'll see. But I was like, I'll do it every day and see what happens. And, a couple of times I learned a couple of little tricks that really helped. So that was really cool. Have you tried tapping for walnut syrup? Much more expensive than maple, but also more we could do that because I got black walnuts all over this place.
I didn't know that was a thing.
When is it tapping? It's about tapping season. Does anybody have a tap I could borrow? Let me know. Nicole at livingfreeintennessee.com.
Yeah, if anybody taps any kind of tree locally, I would like to know about it.
Well, yeah, so they do they tap the box elders and then cook that down into syrup. It's joshuahale.io. I just put the link in the comments. So in case anybody wants to do the AI challenge. But yeah, I just don't have a tap.
Yeah.
But I bet because it's just gone from cold to warm, we're about to be having its tapping season here. Because I think that's because it's when the sap's moving back up the tree.
Yeah.
Yeah. So interesting. See, now there's a side quest. I have just been sent on a side quest. Instead of building the flower seed system, do you want to figure out how to tap trees this weekend?
No.
This is so fun to pick on him. Ken the beekeeper has taps. Ken Johnson? Like my friend Ken? I'll have to ask him. I actually could get taps if he has some.
Yeah.
Because I doubt he's using them. Margot says, squirrel! Right? At the end of the day, I think keeping an eye on your budget while figuring out how to generate revenue from your homestead is a great idea. And if you do want to go all in, then you may have to do a couple of things bigger. And you may have to work some really long days. And you may have to have a job while you're starting your homestead if you're not like independently wealthy going in or just able to buy it outright. But I think it can pay off a lot. The other thing we could do is sell breeding pairs.
Yeah.
Of sheep for more money than we sell sheep for meat.
Yeah.
So that's the other thing. And that just requires a little extra tracking and more ability to keep the wrong one from getting in with the wrong one.
Yes. Which hopefully that's going to be happening very soon.
Yeah. Maybe we could build a barn. That would probably help.
Maybe.
Yeah. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed the show. If you like the show and want to support the work I'm doing here, you can support me in 2 ways. 1, get your coffee at hollowroast.com. 2, consider becoming a member. Head on over to livingfreeintennessee.com to find out more. With that, guys, go out. Make it a great week.